Hi, everyone. I am Jeanette Mulvey, and I'm Content Director of CO from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And I am so excited that you're here to talk about productivity. I think we could all use a little help in that department. So our goal today is to help you maximize productivity in this new virtual world. And we have Jan Lehman here to help us do that. So before I introduce Jan, I just want to go through a few housekeeping notes. So first of all, if you haven't already, please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras using the toolbar on your screen. Later, we will do a Q&A with Jan, and you'll be able to type your questions in the window to the right, and I will ask her your questions as they come in. Or at that time when we do the Q&A, you can actually digitally raise your hand and I'll call on you and you can unmute and turn your camera on and ask that question directly. A couple things about Teams. There are a few different versions. So if you have an older version of Teams, you have to hover your mouse over the middle of your screen to access the toolbar where you would unmute and use your camera or raise your hand. On newer versions, it's at the top. And as I mentioned, there's the raise your hand icon. And lastly, just so you know, this is being recorded, so it could be used on CO in one of our articles. So with that, thank you. Jan Lehman is the president of CTC Productivity, and Jan has a presentation for us, and you'll be able to ask your questions later. So Jan, you go ahead and take it away. I'm going to mute myself.
Jan, I believe you're muted.
Am I unmuted now?
Perfect.
You're good.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be part of this program. Sounds like it's been an amazing lineup. So thanks for having me. So here's the deal. I personally hate waste. I hate it. It's been a pet peeve my whole life. I'm kind of obsessed by it. And every single day, all of us waste what I think are your three most valuable resources. Have you ever stopped to think, what are my three most valuable resources in a business environment? And I'll give you hints. They all start with a T. So we call them the three T's. So I'd love to hear your guesses. So if you'd enter into chat what you think your three most valuable resources are, let's see what you come up with. Outstanding. Most people don't get talent. Robin, nice job. Time, talent. We're missing one more. I don't think anybody's got it. Most people don't get talent, so nice job there. So there's one last one. It's actually technology is the third. So, oops, what happened to my slide? Time, talent, and technology. So nice job. So time, hands down, most valuable resource. You use it, you lose it, that's it. There's no more getting time back in your day. Technology allows us to automate and streamline and get more time back in our day. And so when we have more time, we can maximize our talent. So it all works quite nicely. So here's the deal. I'd be super sad as a time management coach if you listened to me kind of yammer on for an hour and didn't really do anything when you left. So I want you, as you're scribbling down notes or typing your notes, to think very specifically of at least one action item that you're going to do differently from each of the sections I talk about today. So something that you're going to commit to doing differently when you leave today. I'm going to share a statistic with you from the Wall Street Journal, and I just love this. And this was actually a quote before the pandemic. So I'd be a little nervous to know what the numbers look like now. But the idea, what the Wall Street Journal says, is that office workers in this day and age are wasting almost half their workday because they weren't taught the organizing skill to deal with the demands of today's environment. So it's talking about organizing your time, organizing your data, your priorities, your tasks, the list goes on and on. And I don't share this with you to make you feel defeated, not at all. I share it with you more to say there is massive opportunity out there, and it's not that hard. In fact, we have gotten whole organizations. We've increased billable hours for companies by 30% just by the simple tactics that we're going to present to you today. So we want you to really embrace this and realize that there's a huge area of opportunity for you as well. Before I get started, though, I'd love to hear what your challenges are. And if I don't answer it in the formal presentation I have, let's make sure we talk about it in the Q&A. So if you do me a favor, enter into chat. What's your biggest issue? Is it your toddler climbing on your lap while you're trying to work? Is it interruptions? What exactly are you struggling with? I'd love to hear. Interruptions. Thanks, Mary. Where to start, Jay? I love it. Does that mean it's a long list? Or where to start today? Spouse working from home, interruptions. Okay, good. Managing different priorities. Barking dog, interrupting family. I couldn't agree more. My family's all quarantined in certain rooms right now. Dogs, husband. When to disconnect. These are outstanding. Lack of focus. Thanks, Dawn. That's very helpful. Perfect. That gives us some good things to go on. I'm going to hit on most of those. There might have been one in there I wouldn't. So please, if I don't answer your most burning question during the presentation part, let's talk about it in the Q&A. But I feel like the advice is what you're looking for. So good. So we're going to talk about two different things. We're going to talk about the new workplace and then also touch on technology. So the new workplace today looks very different, right? It's the combination of maybe some of you are back in the office and you have colleagues that aren't, or maybe you need to move back and forth between locations. But the name of the game right now is flexibility. We really need a better way of being able to work and be more fluid in the way we work and be more focused. So many of us thought, obviously, when this all happened in March, that this would be temporary. And I heard from many of my clients that they would kind of hunker down at the kitchen counter because that was the space that had the biggest area to spread out. And now it's time to find better solutions. So for those of you that have set up shop in the kitchen, we want to get you out of that space. The kitchen is the hub of the home. It's where most of the interruptions and the traffic is going to be. So the number one thing I want to touch on today is talking about the impact of distractions and interruptions in impacting your productivity. So there's lots of studies that have been done that talk about every time you get interrupted, how much time you lose. And so I'm going to give you a little quiz. When let's say that you're working, even if it's in a home office or a sequestered space at home, and one of your children walks in and you had your head wrapped around something you were working on, a budget or a strategy of some sort, and your child comes in and says, "Can you help me with this math question?" And you switch gears and help your child with the math question and then come back. How much time do you lose, not for the break that you took, but how much time do you lose because you got to step back and kind of regroup and start over? Let's see what your guesses are in chat. How much time do you think you lose when you have to switch your executive functioning from one thing to another? Maria, it's a good guess. Let's see what else you've got. Anybody else got some numbers? Maria's saying 10 minutes. It's actually higher. So 5 minutes. Going the wrong way, Carrie. Nice job. Todd got it. So there's a lot of studies out there. This particular study is from the University of California, and they say it's about 23 minutes. So it is literally equivalent to taking like 2 steps forward and 1 back constantly all day long. So I'm glad some of you entered into chat that your biggest issue were interruptions and those sort of things, because we need to stop them. And that's the focus for this part of the presentation. So those interruptions can come in a lot of different ways. They can be auditory interruptions, they can be visual interruptions, and we want to combat both. So for sure, and some people are more susceptible to one versus the other. So if you're susceptible to auditory distraction, the headphones that you get, or the little earplugs you get on the airplane, are perfect. Or you could do what I did and confiscated my teenage son's Beats headphones, and they have that fabulous like noise reducing functionality. But the goal is you limit that noise. And here's the deal. With either one of these, you're still going to hear the baby crying in the crib. But what you're going to do is you're going to block out just that chit chat that's going on in the house. Somebody else is watching the kids, but you just, as a parent, can't tune it out. It's highly distracting and it's really hard to focus. So you really want to consider if those are things that you want to do. I'm actually recommending to a lot of my clients that noise reducing headsets are part of the standard equipment they give to their work and home employees. Then we also have the workspace as well. So many of my clients, when they got, we said, hey, let's move out of the kitchen counter, and they set up shop maybe on a screened-in porch. And a number of them have said, you know what, Jan, I just feel like I want to go weed the garden or mow the lawn. And so we've really had to tweak and move where they sit. I had one client, we set up her office looking out over her beautiful backyard. She was a strategic, amazing, brilliant woman, but she had ADD and she was easily distracted. And so she would find herself wandering off, watching the squirrels and the birds. And just by turning her desk around, her productivity spiked. So it's simple, but it's really powerful. So really think about where your distractions and your interruptions are coming from and what you can do to minimize those. Going on that vein, I want to talk a little bit about technology. So I'm a huge fan of technology, and we're going to talk about how to use it more effectively. But technology can be just as disruptive as your family. So going into the new technology right now, many of you are on instant messaging and chats and all the new fun communication tools. But what's happening is people are popping in. It's the equivalent of somebody just popping into your cubicle at work and interrupting you and starting to talk. And so you want to be really careful about some of the technology as well. So one of the things to start considering is start having a conversation with your colleagues, with the people you work with on a daily basis about your communication preferences. So maybe explain to them, you know, I am a task-oriented person and I just want to hunker down and get my work done. And I get kind of irritated when people pop in, or maybe you're a relationship-oriented person. And when somebody pops in, it's super fun for you to get in and chat. And so have conversations about maybe when you want to use the chat and video features and when not to use them. Don't be afraid to turn off your notifications. So turning on Do Not Disturb or turning off all the pinging and banners that are popping up from email. Because again, every one of those visual or auditory distractions will take you down a bad rabbit hole. So one of the other things you want to do is you really want to block time on your calendar, and we call it focus time. And so if you're limited in the amount of time during the day when you can't really block out the world, then you want to figure out that time of day when you're most focused. For about 80% of us, we're morning people. So you want to figure out that time and then actually block it on your calendar. And so put a reoccurring appointment, you know, maybe it's 8 to 9 every morning, it's focus time, and then sync up with your family calendar. So if somebody else is trading off watching the toddler during the day, you want to definitely say, hey, 8 to 9 is my most precious time. You take the toddler to the park so I can have a super quiet house and I can do my very best work without interruption. So think about syncing up family calendar to personal calendar to use your time wisely. The other thing is our calendars have become a really important communication tool in the virtual world. So I'm hearing from a lot of clients that they don't know when they should call their boss. Their boss had a baby and they're like, when do babies sleep? Are they getting up early or sleeping in late? I can't remember. And so there's really a lot of communication challenges right now where people aren't reaching out when they should. So some of the advice we have is start using your calendar as a communication tool and make everybody on the team start to look at each other's calendars, share your calendars, have each other look at each other's calendars before you contact somebody. So they'll see focus time. They also ideally put your start and end day. So say I start at 6 and I end at 3. Put it on your calendar so people know calling after 3 is not a time they're going to catch you. Another strategy is super important is putting in what maybe we had is when we were in university and we called it office hours. Our professors had that. So maybe from 3 to 4 when you're kind of brain dead and that's a perfect time for you to be doing chatting and phone calls. Put that on your calendar. If you want to reach out to me, that's a great time to just come in through the chat feature and I'm very available to you. So a really important strategy for leaders in particular to make themselves available to their staff that might be a little afraid to reach out. So I'm curious who captured some good action items in there. So do me a favor and enter any action items that you picked up in that first part. And know that by sharing it with others, you're going to be more accountable to yourself to actually do it. So it's very powerful exercise. But what's some of the stuff you worked? Good. Thanks, Jeanette. So using your calendars, maybe using them differently as a communication tool. Love the Do Not Disturb. Mary's going to try that. Highly recommend it. Block time for focus time. Jeanette, those are great. Yep. Perfect. All right. Those are good examples. Thank you. All right. Now we're going to get into technology, one of my most exciting topics. And here's the deal. We were not so lucky to have COVID hit, but we were so lucky that right before COVID hit, there was an influx of amazing technology that came into our world and has made working in a remote world so much easier. So it's helped us be able to access data from wherever we are, to be able to communicate and collaborate in a team environment, and to build in better accountability, which is a tricky area for a lot of people right now. They're used to kind of managing by walking around and see who is in their seats, and now they need new ways of figuring out how to keep people accountable. So both Microsoft and Google have introduced some tools. Microsoft has introduced the Microsoft 365 suite. Google, I'll tell you about in a second, has introduced some similar tools. And the whole idea is they're creating a new way for us to work. So we've really moved from working as individuals to really working in more of a team environment, and we needed better tools than just email. And that's what they're bringing to us. Within Google, Google has always had a history of integrating well with other third-party applications. And so Google is sort of collaborating with these tools on here to build that similar sort of Teams environment. And just this month, because this is what they do, Microsoft does something, Google does something, they keep up with each other. Just this month, Google announced that they're introducing something called Google Workspace, which is straight on competing with the Microsoft Teams environment, that communication collaboration hub. So everything I'm going to talk about coming forward is applicable in both the Google and the Microsoft worlds. So I'm going to give you some examples of what it was like before COVID, and then what we might recommend now that you're doing to work in this more virtual world. So let's take an example of, let's take a young man back in his office, and he's sitting at his desk, and he gets an email from his boss, and his boss wants to know, urgently needs a sales number. So he logs onto the network drive, gets the sales number, quickly emails it to the boss, everybody's hunky-dory. Fast forward into the COVID world, and this young man happens to be a young dad. And he's at home with a couple feisty toddlers, and it's a beautiful day. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to get them out of the house. I'm going to go to that huge park, about a half hour away, and let them play on the playground equipment. I'll bring my phone so I can do email and be really productive. Perfect plan. Sounds awesome. Now he gets the urgent email from his boss, and he's in a park, and he's panicked because he doesn't have access to VPN to log into the network to get the urgent sales number. So now he's stressed out. Do I admit to my boss I'm not at my desk? Or do I throw my toddlers in the car and they're going to be screaming at me the whole drive home? Very stressful situation. So what we recommend is take advantage of this fabulous technology and get your data in the cloud. That's the very first thing you want to do in the Google world, the Microsoft world, because getting your data in the cloud improves accessibility, and it also is a foundational piece to allow you to use a lot of these other features that I'm going to be talking about. So in the Microsoft world, the cloud solutions would be SharePoint and OneDrive. And then in Google, it's Google Drive. Those are all cloud-based solutions. And so for this particular young man, he doesn't need VPN if he's got his data in the cloud. He can use his phone and access his sales reports. They're not on the network drive anymore. They're in the cloud. His boss will never know he's not at his desk. So again, employee engagement goes up, productivity goes up, everything's good. Let's talk about a different scenario. We talk about a scenario about collaboration. So historically, what would happen is somebody like you might be writing up a document in Word or in Google Docs, and then you might drop off a copy to your boss or email your boss a copy, and more likely than anything, they'd print it off, and then they'd get the red pen out, and then they'd give it back to you. Can't do that very easily in a virtual world. So again, recommendation, get that data in the cloud because you're going to have access to a lot of new features. For sure, start using links instead of sending an attachment in an email. By sending a link, if you send the email with an attachment and your boss takes 2 days to actually open it to look at it, in the meantime, you've continued to move forward on modifying the document. They're now going to be 2 different versions. Sending a link ensures that no matter when anybody's looking at it, you're looking at the exact same version. And the other thing we want you to start using is what they call co-authoring. Again, it's available in the Microsoft world and in the Google world. So in the Microsoft world, you have it for Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and then in Google, you have it for those equivalent applications as well. And what that looks like is in the top right-hand corner, they look a little bit different, but they function about the same. But this is Word, and in the top right-hand corner, you'll see something like share. And that tells you that your data is actually in the cloud because you can now share it with somebody. And so that's a way to get a link or just share the document directly. And then the other thing is you now have power. You now have the ability to determine how somebody can edit and manipulate a document. So let's say that your boss is one of those, like, everything they say needs to go into your document. Well, then give them edit access. Just let them type it directly into the document. But maybe you have a colleague that you respect their opinion, but you don't want them modifying your document. So then you'd probably get them review access so that they could comment on the side and you can cut and paste into your actual document. So the benefits from using these sort of features, real-time collaboration, you're both working on the same document at the same time. It's kind of creepy because you can kind of see people in there at the same time with you. It's a little weird. But it eliminates the duplication of work of somebody writing somebody and somebody else typing it in. It minimizes email space. If you're having a challenge with always having to clean out your email inbox because of space, using links and collaborating directly will change your world. And then lastly, you're going to save some trees, which makes us super happy. So I'm just curious, I want to look in chat. Is anybody using, have you moved your data in the cloud and you're super excited, or are you starting to use these collaboration features? And what would you say? You think these are like the right things for people to be doing right now? Let's see what people are saying in chat. Or maybe nobody's using it. Maybe what you're going to put in chat is that you're excited to try it. Microsoft Cloud is everything, auto saves. Yeah, they love the auto save. That's great. Ben's really happy. Yep, works great. These are simple things. We just don't often take the time to explore our technology. So Dropbox, yeah, Ben uses Dropbox. We actually recommend start using all the tools within a suite because they all integrate quite nicely. So if you are on disparate systems, if you're on Microsoft and Dropbox, probably stop using Dropbox and move into the Microsoft suite. But try it. Awesome. Great, Mary. Good. All right, so we have one last one. So I'm going to talk about accountability. Again, this has been a challenge for a long time in businesses. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot that has to happen to get managers to be very effective at keeping people accountable. One side of it is having the tools to use, which is what I'm going to talk about. But you also need to be training your managers on how to keep people accountable, how to have those conversations, etc. But let's talk about the tool side because it's going to help you significantly. So pre-COVID, what we were seeing a lot of is a manager would run a meeting and there'd be a lot of brainstorming, great conversation. If you were lucky, somebody took notes, but everybody would walk out and then there was a little bit of confusion on who's doing what, where did we decide? You might also have managers that are delegating through email. So they're delegating a bunch of stuff out and then they have to reread emails to figure out who did I ask to do what? Lots of different approaches here. The great thing about the new technology is there's a whole new set of task management apps that are significantly helping with personal task management as well as accountability for team tasks. So in the Microsoft world, you would see Planner and To Do. So Planner, think of Planner as a place that you're running a team meeting and you decide that Bob needs to do this and Brenda needs to do this. You would actually put that into your plan for the team. And the great thing about Microsoft in particular is Microsoft then integrates with the personal To-Do app. And so if something is assigned to Brenda, it's actually going to show up on Brenda's To-Do app, as well as everything else Brenda puts in her To-Do app. So love the integration within Microsoft. On the Google side, again, you might be using third party. You may be using Asana or Basecamp as kind of the project plan, the team plan. Todoist is a great tool to use for individual. And you can use Zapier to connect these two to create some integration between the two. So the benefits with using, again, some of these features is it's a central location. People coming out of a meeting are like, what did we decide on? Everybody knows, well, it's in the cloud. It's in our team environment. I can go look at what I was assigned. It's easy to access. And because it's easy to access, the other thing we're recommending is a behavioral change so that you can run more effective meetings. So what we're recommending to people is don't have everybody keep coming into the meeting and then we go around the room and give a status update. Have everybody update the plan and the status before you come in the meeting. And then we can just look at the plan, we're in the meeting, and zone in on the areas that are behind schedule and have a brainstorming and rich conversation around where do we need to help. That is an effective meeting. So think about how your technology can really shift how you improve running effective meetings. And like I said, the planner and to-do automatic integration are amazing. The to-do app is one of my favorite apps within 365, and I'm super excited to see what all Google is creating within their new workspace. Now I'm going to wrap up, and we'll be moving into Q&A in a second, but I just want to give a little bit of warning. So as you can tell, I'm a super big fan of technology, but technology can be as much a hindrance as it can be a helper if it's not rolled out correctly. And so realize that what makes these communication and collaboration hubs so amazing is they're highly customizable and they're highly integrated. That's also where the danger comes. And so we're coming in and doing a lot of cleanup with companies where we're finding they're making quite a mess in the environment and productivity is going down because of the technology. So you really want to think about how do we let people play with the technology in a very controlled manner. You can create quite a mess if you're not careful. You want to pilot the technology. Rolling out like Microsoft Teams or Google Workspace is not like saying, hey, I want to do a 1-hour training on Word. It's a complex integrated tool set, and you need to pilot it, figure out how you're going to use it as an organization, and then roll out into your training based on how you've decided you're going to use it within your company with your best practices. So really thinking long-term about how you want to set it up, what your team structures look like, is going to really serve you very well as you start to leverage that technology. So I'm curious if there's anything people got excited. Oh, I just saw Janet. Thank you. She loves OneNote. Love OneNote too. There's so much. I wish I could be chatting with you guys all day. So tell me an action item coming out of this section. What's one thing you're going to do maybe related to technology to be more effective in your role? And I see some questions coming here, and we'll answer during Q&A. But what's an action item for some of you in the technology space? Anybody going to talk to their boss about moving things to the cloud so they can work in the park? Learn how to use OneNote. Yeah, OneNote's an amazing tool. Make sure all the documents and info are stored in the cloud. Perfect. Thank you. Collaboration is really tough right now. Got to check out Planner and OneNote. Good, Mary. Yeah, you'll be happy you did. So perfect. Thank you for those of you that are sharing. Again, you're more likely to take action if you share it, even with a group of strangers. So I'm happy you did that. So we're going to be wrapping up here, but I did want to ask a favor. I would love to keep in touch. And so they're going to be entering into the chat a hyperlink that you can click on. And here's the deal. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn at a minimum. So if you fill out just the top part, that's all I'm going to do. If you have any interest in sort of what we do and how we do it, you can fill out that middle section. And then the bottom is if you're interested in our blog or a book. And then down at the bottom, there's a comment section. Feel free, if there's anything I could have done better or differently to make this a better presentation for you, I would love to hear it. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to fill out this. Go ahead and fill it out. And then I also want you to sit and think for a minute about everything I just shared with you and look through your notes. And if you haven't identified your specific action items yet, we're going to do that right now. So give that 1 minute and give it some thought. You could also start thinking about questions that you might have in the Q&A for us to discuss as a group.
Jan, how are they? Oh, there we go.
Get it?
They can just click on that link in the chat.
Click on the link and it'll take you to the internet. Yeah. And you can do it now or you could do it later, but it's nice to. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you. And I'm super excited to get into the Q&A. It looked like there was a number of really good questions coming through. I think I'm going to wrap up, though, with one last kind of story, because a lot of times I just don't think people understand the power of the technology, the power of focus time, the power of stopping the interruptions. So I worked with a gentleman, and we worked on the 3 T's. What are the 3 T's? See if anybody gets it in chat. What are your 3 most valuable resources? I wish I had a virtual prize I could give you. So it's time. Awesome. Jenna got it. So time, talent, and technology. So we worked on the 3 T's. We worked on a lot of things, effective delegation and lots of different things. But this gentleman really believed in these ideas and really made it part of the way he works. And I am happy to report that this man now has 2.5 more hours in his day every day. And he has sustained this for 7 years. Now that's only a 30% bump. The Wall Street Journal tells you 40% is possible. So my question for you is, what would be the impact to the bottom line of your business or to your work-life balance if you had 2.5 more hours back in your day every day? So please take the advice, move forward with your action items, and I hopefully hear how you do with all the change. So thank you so much, and we can flip on over into the Q&A, and I can see your faces too, which is way more fun.
So Jan, thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience did too. So I will ask the audience questions in chat, and if anyone has a question, please type it there, as Jacqueline just said, and also you can raise your hand and I can call on you directly. But because I have the microphone, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to go first. Jan.
Is this going to be like stump the presenter question?
No, but I have a question for you, because there's this like zero inbox movement of like making sure that your inbox is empty every day. And so I was always a zero inbox person. Like by the end of every day, I have no emails left in my inbox, by which I mean I'm filing them into folders within my email based on the topic or what I need to do with them. But I just wonder where you stand with that. And I wonder if you're still sharing your screen. I think you might be.
I'm sorry. Yeah, let me get rid of that.
No, that's okay.
My apologies.
I see myself, which is making me uncomfortable. There we go.
Is that better? Okay.
So yeah, so I just wonder, I think it's called zero inbox. I might have made that up, but just do you have any thoughts on email management?
Absolutely. So the deal is everybody's different and everybody needs a different sort of solution. So typically to achieve zero inbox, that means you're moving emails out of your inbox into like folders in the side, but you still need to act on them. You still have actions you need to do. And that's not the best strategy for somebody where if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So that may work very well for you, but it might not work for another person. But for sure, what we always tell people is your inbox should be like a to-do list. It shouldn't be a place where you're holding on to every single email you've ever received who referred to it later. You want to make sure you understand how to move things out of your inbox, use the advanced search features to be able to find stuff, but keep your inbox down to a shorter list of these are the things I still need to act on. I'll tell you, one of the exciting things about this new technology is you're going to see a move of internal communication moving away from email into Teams and into Google Workspace. So right now within the Google environment, Slack is the technology that they're partnering with them, but it's a whole different way of doing written communication within a company. And over time, external communication with your suppliers, customers, and vendors will also leave email and come into this communication and collaboration hub. So we're going to see a big shift. Email is going to be around for a very long time, but you'll start to see internal communication moving, which lessens the challenge of email, but there's still always huge challenges there. So
yeah.
Did that help, Jeanette? Yeah. It's
Yeah,
all,
actually, you phrased it. That is exactly how I think of it. If I still have to act on it, I leave it in my inbox. So it's like a to-do list. Yeah. So let's go to the audience questions. So you had talked about sharing, putting information in the cloud. And this person just asked if you could talk a little bit about the Mac world or Apple devices in terms of, so
Okay.
if you have no thoughts on that, it's fine.
Nope,
We can move
okay.
on.
What was the whole question? I'm sorry. What?
It says, can you touch
in the Apple and Mac
things
world?
in
Okay.
in the Apple
Yeah.
Mac?
So what I can tell you is that historically, Microsoft apps in particular looked very. Oops. Are you still there? Oh, that's
Yeah.
weird. Historically, Microsoft applications looked very different on an Apple versus a PC. But Microsoft is making huge strides with everything they're doing, that no matter what type of device you're on, an Android, an iPhone, it's going to look the same. So there's finally this plan to get to the place where it doesn't look differently, but there is certain functionality that isn't right always available on a Mac like a PC, and it's kind of confusing. And that's probably about as deep as I can get into kind of the hardware side of it with Apple devices and Mac devices. But no, if Microsoft is striving to go that way, then Google's going to as well. So it should be very seamless no matter what your device on. Everything looks the same. I hope that helped that person.
So this person says, we're too small a firm to use most of these suggestions in-house, but how can I politely assess if our clients are using this technology?
Oh, well, I would say you're never too small to use the functionality, and you're going to be forced into the Microsoft 365 suite or the Google Space suite over time, because they're just going to be sunsetting a lot of that technology. So it's not necessarily a matter of size. It's just a matter of when you're going to start taking advantage of it. And as far as the discussions with your, vendors, suppliers, whatever, just start asking them, if they're comfortable collaborating on documents with you. Sometimes IT departments do not want some collaboration, like they don't want external partners in their team's environments. But hopefully that'll change as we get more comfortable with the security around our technology. But absolutely start talking with your vendors, suppliers, and customers about how can we communicate and collaborate more effectively by working live on documents at the same time versus emailing copies. It's just a matter of asking the question and maybe showing them how to do it so they get comfortable, and they will thank you for it, because people don't hit pause and take time to figure this out.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned before was calendars and encouraging your employees to use their calendars. And I think that that's a thing that a lot of companies don't do and don't realize that the calendar is everything, and how many back and forth emails you could save. Like, does 12 o'clock work from you? No, 1 o'clock works. And so I wonder just if you have, with all of the things that are happening with employees working remotely, I wonder if you have any thoughts about the need for productivity training that companies should be doing with their own employees, because I don't know that that's something companies are focusing on, is the productivity aspect.
Yeah, well, of course, I'm a little biased there, but we're definitely seeing a trend. For a while, like, companies went away from training. And I think they were thinking, oh, you can find stuff on the internet and whatever. And it just doesn't work quite that well. So we're seeing the pendulum come back. We're seeing a lot of focus around productivity training. And you hit something on the head that's so spot on. I, for a long time, have just assumed that people know about the importance of sharing calendars internally and people changing behavior, and they don't. And to me, that's basic. So I don't mean to sound judgmental, but spot on. There's so much time waste there with people not keeping their calendars updated and sharing calendars with each other. I'm a huge fan of tools like Calendly, like if you wanted to schedule a meeting with me, I would send you a link to my Calendly app, and you could see my availability. You couldn't see what I was doing when I was busy, but you could schedule that appointment, and I don't have to be involved in that. And so that elimination of that time-consuming, back and forth is a huge productivity gain.
Yeah, totally. I love that app. I love when people send me that. I'm like, one of the things about using your calendar that I think people don't realize is that you can create appointments on your own calendar. Like if you're going out in the middle of the day to the park or to get a haircut or whatever, which people are doing more of now that we're home all the time. And you can create that appointment on your own calendar and make a note to yourself what it's for without everyone else being able to see. Like they can just see that you blocked it out. And I think people are afraid to put too much information there because they don't want the whole company to know that they're going for a doctor's appointment. But you can actually do that without, in a way that doesn't let them schedule during your time, but doesn't reveal your private business.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely marking things private is exactly what you do. The other thing is where we're also seeing a lot of time waste is when I'm talking to somebody and they're like, well, I need to look at my family calendar, and they'll get out their paper calendar.
Right.
To overlay your work calendar with your family calendar so you can see them together and know, my work calendar's open, but I've got a soccer tournament I'm going to. So again, trying to move the family calendar into more of a technical solution and overlaying those makes your world easier too.
Yeah. I have a question here. As the person is curious about the status grid prep before meetings to make them more effective. Do you have suggestions on the structure of that grid, something simple to start with?
I don't know what they mean by status grid prep, but maybe I'll give just my best practice around effective meetings if that's what they're looking for.
Sure.
So for sure, having a very clear agenda and sending that out before is one of the first most important things, because without telling people before what's going to be discussed, you'll have people that won't prepare for anything, and you'll have people that'll prepare for everything, not knowing what's on the agenda, depending on how nervous they are. So a very clear agenda, sending it out before. You've absolutely got to have a really good meeting facilitator. And the subject matter expert that maybe called the meeting isn't necessarily always the best meeting facilitator. So you really want somebody that's not afraid to say, hey, we got to wrap it up. We've got to move on to the next item. You want to definitely take advantage of your technology. So again, if you envision what these communication collaboration hubs look like in Google and in Microsoft, you would have within the Teams environment, you'd be using like a OneNote notebook to have listed, here's the agenda. And then in there, you would, as the meeting goes along, you'd be writing the minutes of the meeting right next to the agenda. You'd pull up Planner, and that's where you'd be capturing any action items. So Bob said, Bob's going to do this by Friday. Brenda's going to do this by Saturday. The Planner action items, and they sync directly to the to-do app so they don't get lost in the translation. There's just so many things. If people are bringing up topics that are not on the agenda, that's when you add it to a parking lot. So you would say that's a great idea, but we're going to stay focused on the set agenda. We'll add that to the agenda next week. There's a million things. I'm trying to think what else is in there.
Do you have an idea of what you think is the right meeting length? Where, at what point do you start to lose people mentally?
There's probably not really a correct meeting length. It depends on the people that are in attendance and what's going on. I mean, the longer, certainly the more breaks, get people to stand up and move around. I'm a big fan of standing meetings. Definitely, the idea is once we get through the agenda, let's get the heck out of here. We don't need to stay the whole time. But it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, you wouldn't do like a strategic planning session in a half hour, right? So there isn't necessarily a best length of time. It's probably more coming in. I think one of the key things is identifying what the objective of a meeting is. Often that's a big miss. So I'll ask people, what are all these meetings? And they don't even really know why they're going to the meeting and what the objective is. So if you clarify, well, the objective of this meeting is just a quick check-in to see if there's any issues in the business, well, then that's probably a 30-minute meeting, if that, right? That kind of helps define it. But if it's, the objective is something bigger, then it probably needs to be a longer meeting.
I think you make a really good point about setting the objective for meetings. I cannot tell you in my career how many meetings I have been in where I actually couldn't even pay attention because I was spending all of my focus on who is this person, what is their job, and how does what they're talking about pertain to my job? Yes. And I have actually thought about this a lot, how often we go into meetings and no one takes the first 2 minutes to say, this is who this person is, this is what they do, and this is why you are here
Yes.
this conversation. And it happens all the time.
It's so well said. I had a client, same thing. She would say, you know, we were looking at where all her time was being spent. And she said, well, I go to these marketing meetings and I don't even really know why I'm there. And so I asked her to go back to the meeting coordinator and ask what her role was. And what she found out is she's like a marketing guru. And they wanted her there so that as they're laying out their marketing plans, they want her to say, no, that's a bad strategy. She didn't know that, and she felt bad, like commenting on their plans because she didn't want to appear like a know-it-all, so she never talked. So it was a massive miss. So spot on, very clear who's in the meeting, why are they in the meeting. If you have people in the meeting just so they can hear what the decision is, that's where meeting minutes come in. You can really shrink who all needs to be there if, again, you're using a lot of these meeting best practices, for sure. But yeah, spot on. It's amazing how many people won't raise their hand too and like say, why are we here?
Right. As you can guess, I often am the person who raises their hand and says, I have no idea what I'm doing here. This person asked a kind of a specific question, but I would like to talk about it more broadly too. They say, how do you feel about like companies blocking employees' social media usage while they're working? So I'll let you answer that. And then I think I'd like to know just more broadly about how you feel about businesses being able to even try to manage their employees' time while they're working from home.
Well, so the first one about the social media, that's a slippery slope for sure. My personal opinion is if we can teach managers how to lay out better plans, realistic plans, and keep people accountable to plans, then what we're really focusing on is the end result of what that person's delivering. And I don't care if they get it done in 3 hours or 20 hours, that's just what needs to happen. But with that missing, and that's why I'm excited about this suite of tools and again, the soft skill training to go around it. But with that missing, that's where a lot of managers right now are in a panic with people like not in the office and they can't see them because they feel like they don't know what they're doing. So social media, I mean, I think of the younger generation and my teenage kids, and they just need a break every once in a while. They need to pull out their phone and totally take a break, and social media is a fun break for them. So you shouldn't diss somebody because they're popping over to social media. It's like going to the coffee cooler or going to the bathroom. I need to reset. The problem is it's a very different tool, and people can make bad assumptions that this person's not very focused because I saw them on Facebook. And so, like I said, slippery slope. I can understand why organizations aren't giving access, but at the same time, it is some level of relief for a lot of people. And then what was the second part of the question? It was how do we
you sort of answered it just more generally, like letting, I interviewed someone a few weeks ago who said you really need to measure your employees' value, not their time. And I think that's what you were alluding to. Like now that everyone's working from home, not everyone, but a lot of people are working from home, employers are struggling with the traditional ways of measuring employee value.
Yes.
Are just not useful in this situation. And I think that as a productivity coach, you're talking about how to be more productive, but companies are trying to figure out how do I measure productivity? So I guess my question is, how do companies measure employee productivity?
Yeah, and the only way that I can come up with is you could definitely, if you're in a transactional type environment, you could definitely track, if I'm taking customer service calls, I probably should be able to do 100 a day or whatever. And you can really track that again with some of the fabulous technology we have. But in different environments, more, professional environments where it's not transactional, it's harder. And so again, that's where it comes back to very clear expectations of what this person needs to deliver and keeping them accountable to those deliverables. I was actually in some weird way, and I wasn't excited about COVID, obviously, but I was excited that managers that have been really holding back from allowing their employees to work from home were now going to be able to see the benefits from it. And what we're actually seeing is that managers are super happy and they're shocked by how productive people are. In fact, the pendulum has almost gone too far where people can't figure out when to stop working at home and they're working too many hours. So I'm actually coaching more leadership teams. They're like, our employees are like killing themselves to try and get all this work done. It's almost like they don't know when they should stop. And so it's just been an interesting experiment to see that, we can work from home and we can be productive.
Yeah, I think it's just forced companies to, let go of the ways in which they were controlling employees. And I don't mean controlling in a negative way. I just mean monitoring, evaluating, because like you used the example before of someone taking their kid to the park. Well, in order to survive and remain mentally healthy, I mean, that's a thing that people just need to do now during the workday. So do you feel that you've seen companies, I don't want to say lower their expectations of their employees, but just become more flexible in understanding that maybe the employee just needs more time or needs to do it at a different time of day or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I definitely do. And, I'm being brought into the companies that have management, have an open mindset, and they're looking for how do we drive productivity and engagement and starting to have these conversations. But yeah, I think people are recognizing, especially right now during COVID with kids at home, that we've got to adjust our expectations. We're definitely having a lot of conversations around, if you had an employee that maybe they were supposed to be doing bigger strategic projects and they're now forced to be at home with a toddler, maybe shift what you're having them work on to be more realistic. So maybe having them work on more tactical, smaller projects versus bigger strategic. So we're definitely seeing a little bit more flexibility on the side of management on how do I give the right sort of task to people given their current environment and quite honestly, their emotional state. If you have somebody that has a health issue or a loved one with a health issue, we're definitely seeing a lot of relief given to, a lot of companies are saying, while you're home, shore up your home, like get your, and be ready to hit the ground running when you come back. And there's a tight link between employee engagement and productivity. And if you support your employee, you do everything you can for them, you care about them, you're going to see huge spikes in productivity. The Gallup does, employee engagement research. And they came up with the Q12, the 12 questions that every company should ask of their employees. And they shrunk the number down to like, what are the 12 most important questions? And one of those questions is, does anybody care about me at work? Like, that's a really important thing to know, that of all the questions that can drive productivity and engagement, it's about the relationship and the person caring. So we're seeing a lot of people spending this time building that tight relationship with their employees to build that level of trust so that ultimately it's going to really help, with productivity in the long run, which is awesome.
Yeah, we have just a couple of minutes left. I wanted to ask you, someone said before about how would you encourage your partners, your clients to use this technology. More broadly, I wonder if you have any advice for people who find themselves in a situation where maybe it's their boss or their biggest client or someone who is not following good practices in terms of productivity, and their unwillingness to do that is affecting the person, affecting their life and their work. And they need to say to their boss, look, I need you to respect my calendar, or I need you to, share documents with me in the cloud because emailing it back and forth is making extra work for me. Like, how can people address those things without being disrespectful, but saying like, hey, you need to get on board with this if we're going to be working remotely?
Yeah, it's so funny. My husband and I were just talking yesterday that, give me a coachable average employee over a brilliant, inflexible employee. Because the more people are open to change and open to trying new things, the more, benefit you're going to see. So, I would always just start with, hey, can I show you a trick on how to do something? But quite honestly, if that person is rigid and not willing to change, there's not a lot you can do. And that's the part that kills me as a coach. But a lot of people, like I said, just don't explore technology. They don't look at it. So if you can show them, a feature and then sell it as this is the benefit to you, a lot of people are very about themselves. And so, hey, if we started doing this, it would, get you answers faster or, sell the benefit to the actual individual, and they probably will pay attention.
Great. So we're almost out of time. I just want to give you a chance to tell everyone, where can they I know we put that link in there to answer that questionnaire, but can you tell them where they can find you if they want to learn more about what you do?
Yeah, thank you. So you can just go to our website. So it's ctcproductivity.com. The CTC stands for Create the Culture, because our goal is to create a culture of productivity on all levels of the organization.
Great. Thank you so much, Jan. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone in the audience who joined. Before we go, I just want to remind everyone to come back at 2 p.m. today Eastern Time for our Dream Big Awards. It's the culmination of this 3-day event. It's very exciting. I hope you all come back and join. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for the Big Week for Small Business. It was really my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Jan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.